I am, as should be a surprise to basically nobody by this point, something of a retro game fanatic. There's just something about the 8 and 16-bit eras of gaming especially that makes me happy, not that I'm averse to modern games. So something like the Riki 8-Bit game collection, a modern take on retro gaming, should be absolutely right up my alley. Digital crack for a retro gamer like me, but sadly it's one that I find really hard to recommend for most gamers. Let me explain why. The Riki 8-Bit game collection is made up of 5 titles, and that might make you think that it's a collection of 5 games, what with the whole game collection suffix, right? It's not so. It's essentially 2 games and 3 collections of fresh, retro-styled 8-bit music collections. Specifically on the game side, you get Kira Kira Star Night and Astro Ninja Man DX, while on the music side there's 8-bit Music Power, 8-bit Music Power Final, and 8-bit Music Power Encore. Now, the music collections, which feature some really big-name composers in them, are really well done, proper 8-bit style. There's some really nice music here. I wish I could play some of it for you, but there are 2 problems here. One, you can't actually really do the video capture of the music itself from within the Switch without an external capture card, and I don't want to impinge on their copyright and get a copyright strike on the video. But the music itself is fine, but I feel like there's a much, much bigger problem here. And it's not the fact that I could be narky here and state, and I wouldn't entirely be wrong, that they could have just bundled up all 3 music collections into the one set player, which would make for easier browsing. But no, the bigger problem is really, I pick up my Switch, or a Switch controller when it's docked, because I want to play games. It's not really something that I use as a music player to speak of. If I want to play music, I have a serious quantity of smart speakers I can do that through, or I'll stream it through my phone, but not so much the Switch. And this is honestly something I think could have worked a whole lot better if the Riki 8-Bit game collection had a PC release, because I could totally see myself putting a lot of the music here on in the background while I'm working. Doing so by suspending the Switch's sleep features so it plays beside me feels all kinds of redundant to me. Now, if you are particularly keen on the music in this package, there is a physical special release of the Riki 8-Bit game collection that can be purchased in Japan. I've seen it myself on store shelves, and that appears to come with a soundtrack CD. And obviously with a soundtrack CD, especially here in Australia, if you own it, you can legally rip it, then you've got that music, you can do with it as you wish. But nailed just into the Switch, yeah, I like the music, but I'm really not feeling myself using it that way an awful lot. And that leaves the Riki 8-Bit game collection with just 2 games to rest on. Kira Kira Star Night is a very simple back-and-forth jumping game where you're tasked with catching enough stars falling from the sky before the time runs out. The default character, you do get a few others on successful completion of the game, has 2 jump heights and, well, that's it. It is just back and forth. It is just jump. Aside from a change in background visuals and a couple of static in-between cutscenes, by the time you've played 1 minute of this game, you've pretty much seen everything it has to offer. It's not particularly long, about 8 to 10 minutes or so. And look, don't get me wrong, I actually quite like score attack games. There are plenty of games that I can return to just to try and get a better score from myself, let alone being competitive with someone else. I think back to things like even the classic Nintendo Game & Watch games. You can put me in front of something like Octopus or Greenhouse, and I can be there for hours. But I just don't get that feeling from Kira Kira Star Night. It's just too slender. There's just not quite enough game here to be really compelling for that one more go factor. Games don't have to be long to be good, but they need some kind of hook to keep you hooked, and I just don't feel that Kira Kira Star Night has that. And that leaves us with Astro Ninja Man DX, a wackily titled up-the-screen shooter whose core gimmick is that you collect extra ninja men for multiple firing patterns as you go. So think of it kind of like the double ship that you get in classic Galaga, but dialed up to 11 as it were, with visuals to suit. And this is easily the best and most fun game in the package if you like this style of shoot 'em up. The visuals here are a little simpler than in Kira, but I think they're actually better. They're obviously going for more of that kind of MSX aesthetic, I suppose, although to me it kind of screams much more something like a Commodore 64. We've all got our own terms of reference, right? And look, it's a really good, simple little game again. Regular weapon firing is automatic. All you're really doing is moving left or right and choosing when to fire off your ninja sword beam attack to clear the more persistent foes. As a standalone title, Astro Ninja Man DX is the kind of thing I could recommend if it were a much cheaper Switch game, but that's not how they've packaged this particular selection of games and music. So look, so very many Switch titles are pure soulless shovelware. The eShop is infested with the darn things. And that would be an entirely unfair assessment of the Riki 8Bit game collection, because it's clear that the teams and composers that have worked on each title do indeed have a deep love of the 8-bit era and the game and especially musical styles that predominated back then. From a pure passion standpoint, it's genuinely hard to critique the 8-bit game collection. But from a gaming value perspective, it's hard to recommend unless you're super passionate about 8-bit music and you're happy using your Switch as a music player all of the time. Take out the music and you're left with one very slender star-catching game that honestly I feel will leave many players, even fans of retro titles, rather bored rather quickly, and one decent and interesting shoot-em-up. And look, at the $30 Australian price point that the Riki 8-bit game collection commands here in Australia, it's really hard to see that as particularly good value at all.